Good evening. Welcome to the Willmar City Council meeting for Monday, January 7th, 2008. Roll call.
Mayor Heidke.
Here.
Councilmember Reese.
Here.
Christensen.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Swenson.
Here.
Gardner.
Here.
Dokken.
Here.
Fagerly. DeBleek.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
Thank you, Kevin. It's our practice to begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening to our people and citizens and staff and media representatives who are here in the council chambers. I'd like to greet our citizens who are watching this meeting on television and wish them a Happy New Year. It's time to look into the business of the city for this year. Tonight we have one public hearing and then several reports from committees, and also we have our federal lobbyist, Mr. David Turch, and his associate Kodiak, who is here with him, and we welcome them to the meeting tonight. The first item is to look at any additions, changes, or deletions to the agenda. Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to like for us to take up between items 11 and 12 the previously tabled Labor Committee discussion regarding the Charter Commission.
That's between items 11 and 12, the Labor Committee. I'll call on you at that time, Steve.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dokken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to, under miscellany, talk about the contract for Mr. Dean Johnson.
All right. Anyone else on items? Councilmember Gardner, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also under miscellany, just a brief announcement about the Hawk Creek Watershed Project meeting later this month.
All right, that's under miscellany. I have one change in the agenda if the council would approve of this. Under number 8, we have the legislative update from Mr. Turch. I would like to move that up to, between 6 and 7. He has a plane to catch, and we'd like to hear from him and have a little discussion and then send him on his way. Do you have any problem with changing that item on the agenda? Good. He will be next then. And I'm going to take the liberty of making an announcement here tonight because I want everybody to be aware of this. Each month I receive a beautiful magazine from Jennie-O Turkey Store. It's called Under One Awning. And I very much appreciate receiving this. And as I page through it, there are letters from staff people, and there's always notices of awards and retirements, things like that. And tonight, in this month's issue, I'd like to point out to the public that there's a member who works for Jennie-O named Dennis Anderson. And he's the manager of the growing services for the Western Division Farms. He has worked in several departments throughout his employment with Jennie-O Turkey, including the Human Resources and Industrial Engineering departments. Dennis and his wife Sandy have 2 children, Jason, who lives in Anchorage, Alaska, and Kristen, who lives in Ravenna, Italy. I don't know what happened in that family that the kids scattered so far out, but outside of work, Dennis enjoys golfing, staining glass, fishing, photography, and believe it or not, he enjoys being a member of the Willmar City Council. So tonight I'd like to congratulate Dennis on his 40 years of employment with Jennie-O Turkey Store. I think he deserves a round of applause. Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. That's quite an accomplishment, 40 years.
Mr. Mayor, I asked him, he said he started when he was 12 years old.
Yep. We believe that. Good. We will move ahead then to the consent agenda. Council?
Move to approve.
We have a motion and it's been seconded. Are there any items that council members wish to discuss?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to discuss the municipal utilities minutes of December 31st.
All right, we'll have those pulled. Anybody else? All right, with the exception of the minutes of December 31st for the utilities, those in favor of approving the rest of the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. I would like to point out that there were some reappointments within the consent agenda. Mr. Doug Lindblad and Mr. Jerry Gesch were reappointed to the MUC Board, Robert Flegel to the Cable Advisory Committee, Mylan Schmiesing to the City and County Economic Development Commission Operations Board, and Carol Laumer to the Planning Commission. We thank those citizens for their volunteerism and their willingness to help us lead the city by their good work on a variety of committees that we depend upon. Mick?
Mr. Mayor, and the one
Yes.
we omitted from Rice Hospital, Steve Cedarstrom.
Steve Cedarstrom is being reappointed to the Rice Hospital Board of Directors. Steve is one of our pharmacists here in town. All right. Councilmember DeBleek.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, at December 31st Municipal Utilities Commission meeting, there was a resolution passed by the Commission to move forward with a purchase agreement with CMMPA to purchase an additional 21 megawatts of electricity from the Big Stone 2 power project, and participate with them on up to 30 megawatts reserved for Willmar out of that project. And I think this is a very good move by the Commission to secure some long-range power supply for the city of Willmar. But also it does have some impacts probably for the city for the next maybe 40 to 50 years. So I think I have Municipal Utilities Commissioner Bonowitz and the General Manager Gulmer here tonight if they would like to explain that issue a little bit to the council.
Sure.
And bring us up to date on it and what they're doing, what their thoughts are.
Sure. Bob or Bruce, would either of you or both of you like to come up and explain this issue for us? Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Council and Mayor. We have in 2015 a contract with Great River Energy that will end, and that's 30 megawatts of power. So we need to replace that, and we've been given the opportunity. In fact, we did have the option and approved acquiring 9 megawatts of power from Big Stone 2 some time ago. And when several of the partners decided to terminate their relationship with Big Stone 2, the other members were asked if they would like to up their take from the plant. And we were fortunate enough to be asked to do that. We've spent a lot of time, and the partners did a lot of study as well to determine how much power Willmar would reasonably be able to take from that surplus that was going to be available. And it turns out that we have the opportunity and have decided to take 30 megawatts, so increase from 9 to 30 megawatts. It will cost us about $64,000 a month. It was costing $20, roughly, for the 9 megawatts. And that is to expire at the end of 2008, at which time the developmental process would be completed. And so, as you know, Big Stone 2 is still undergoing evaluation at the PUC to determine whether or not it will be approved. The big hang-up is a transmission line that comes across the state. And in fact, we'll be Thursday evening, Jerry and Bruce and I will be at a hearing, and we will be testifying on behalf of Big Stone 2 to one of the hearing administrators. So we think it's a good idea. It allows us to be an owner, and I think, Les, you're quite familiar with MISO and the difficulties that we have, the transmission constraints as well. And this gives us an opportunity to be an owner, which allows us to receive a lot of revenue. Sufficient, we think, to certainly cover much of the expense that would be associated with constraints that occur on the line. So we think it's a very prudent move for the city. It is a commitment. If Big Stone 2 doesn't happen, then we will not be reimbursed for these developmental costs, which will amount by the end of 2008 to about $1.2 million, but we're quite confident that it will be approved. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Bob. Bruce, did you want to offer some additional comments on this as the general manager?
Bob covered it pretty well. Unless
Okay.
you have specific questions for me.
Okay. Council members, do you have some questions? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bob, how long is this, is our contract? Or we're becoming an owner, so there's no contract?
Well, we're a virtual owner, kind of like virtual reality or something, but we are not a direct owner, but we enjoy all of the privileges as if we were an owner, and all the obligations as well. There are about 8 or 10 companies that are members of the Central Minnesota Municipal Power Agency, and that's the agency that's representing Willmar. It turns out that we will be the biggest purchaser of that power within CMMPA. So we aren't a direct owner, but we do receive all of the benefits as well as the obligations. So I guess in essence we're an owner, but we work through CMMPA.
But our
Now,
obligation...
that'll last as long as the plant operates. So
Okay.
plant life is projected 30 years. We think it'll run 40 to 50 years, maybe longer, with good maintenance.
Councilmember Reese.
The contract that expires in '08 was with Great River
Great River, yes.
and was for how much? How many
That's
megawatts?
30 megawatts,
That's for 30.
yes.
So that would not be renewed?
It doesn't look likely that that will be renewed with Great River. And now we have, the big point about purchasing from Big Stone 2 is that we aren't paying for profits. This is a direct flow-through of costs. There is a small administrative fee for CMMPA to administer that for us. But the projections today are that our power will be purchased, and this is in 2014, at $53 a megawatt. That's probably towards the low end of the market today. So we think it's really a good buy. We're not paying, as I say, to purchase power. We're an owner, and therefore we pay for the cost, not cost plus the profitability.
So essentially, we're replacing the 30 megawatts that we're getting from Great River.
Yes, and as you probably, I think I've mentioned this before, we're also in the process of looking at the plant to see if we can find a way to increase our generating capability there as well, because we're going to grow, and we need to be prepared for the future.
Our own plant you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, and that was going to be my next question. What effect, if any, does this have on those plans?
We've looked at all of these issues as a composite, and we think we need to create as much capability locally as we can. It just seems to us, and from all the people we've talked to, the experts in the field, it really pays to have local control and local generating capability. So we think it's important that we look at that. Obviously, costs and ability to use coal again will have play a part in this, so we're not sure what we're going to be able to do. But definitely we need the 30, and we'll probably be requiring additional capacity beyond that.
But the wind generation is going to be what?
Wind projected right now, well, we have the two the turbines that we're looking at, and they're each 2.5 megawatts. So we'd have 5 there. Then you can figure that you're going to have about 30 to 35% efficiency on those, or availability, because of wind factors downtime, whatever. So, you know, it doesn't add much. And not only that, but for every megawatt of wind, you need a backup, because a day may come when the wind isn't blowing, so you still need generating capability beyond that.
So you're exploring alternative production, ways of production other than coal also?
Correct. Biomass. We're even looking, Jerry and I started, Jerry Gesh, some time ago, looking at some nuclear stuff. And we've recently come across some materials indicating that there is like a 20 megawatt battery, nuclear fuel, that's being developed. And so there are other things. We're going to look at all of the technologies. Chances of that happening are pretty slim. But we're definitely looking at all of the different avenues to get the fuel that we need. You know, there's a lot of factors involved with harvest and transporting if you're looking at biomass, but nonetheless, we're trying to look at that too.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Dockett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Gom, can I ask you a couple questions? I noticed in the report in the West Central Tribune, I just will read a couple of paragraphs here. Bruce Gom, Willmar Municipal Utilities General Manager, recommended at the meeting on Monday that the Commission consider 20 megawatts rather than 30 megawatts. He cautioned the Commission members against putting too many eggs in one basket, pointing out that the city should leave open options to develop other alternative sources of energy. They include the possibility of upgrading the city's coal and natural gas-fired plant, adding wind power generation, and possibly developing medium to slow-speed diesel units for peaking capacity. COM also cited the uncertainties about the Big Stone 2 project itself. The project's owners will not know until April 17th if it will be issued the certificate of need to move forward. There is the possibility of an appeal if a permit is granted, and a belief that carbon tax will become law and increase the cost for coal-fired power plants. You still have those concerns, and do you think you think 30 was too many?
Well, it's a very dynamic question without a clear-cut answer to it. I went to that meeting with that recommendation based on all the facts that I could gather at that time. And you were looking at a time frame of 2014, which is, or 2015, you know, it's out there a ways. And the uncertainties of what can happen between now and then made me a little bit hesitant to go to the full 30 megawatt, which the consultants had recommended that we go with. So we brought those consultants in at our last commission meeting and went through that, and when all the commissioners went through that whole process, they decided that the 30 megawatts was the best option for the city.
And you're okay with that?
I'm okay with it. You know, the whole market situation, the whole thing, still is always causing me concern. It's, you know, my job to keep track of that and make sure that you know, we are getting the lowest cost energy possible and that we have the best mix. And I will continue to do that. And I expressed all my concerns and issues to the commissioners, and I respect their decision to go with the 30 megawatts.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council members have any questions here? Ron, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick one. As a virtual owner, then, can we sell this
Yes.
to someone else?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can. As a matter of fact, there will likely be an overlap. The plant is currently projected to come in sometime on 2013, and our contract with GRE doesn't expire until 2015. So there will be some probably excess capacity with both of those contracts in place. But as Mr. Bonowitz indicated, the market right now would support sale of that energy most all the time. So it will be ours to do with however we want, and our current projections are that it should not be a problem to sell it into the market at a profit.
I have a couple questions, Bruce, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Are you confident that this line and this generation plant is going to go online? I mean, there's a lot of debate about this yet, right? Because of the potential pollution from a coal-burning generation plant?
Yes, there is pretty strong opposition to it. However, the opposition has forced the issue to be brought to light. And I feel strongly that the plant will happen, that by shining the bright light on it and looking at all the issues, it's become more and more obvious that it is needed. If you look at the load growth in our region and the amount of generation that's projected, and also the age of the existing generation, this is one of the few opportunities that we have to add power into our grid in this area. And so I believe the legislators are becoming aware that the PUC seems to understand that pretty well, and everybody's just doing their due diligence to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Okay, another question I have is, we're kind of the beneficiaries of this project. We're not driving it. It's really being driven by the proposed need for electrical services in the metropolitan area. Isn't that correct? That they expect Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the suburbs to grow another 1 million people, and they need more power. So that's why they're drawing it in from South Dakota, and we're just right on line from the plant to the cities. Isn't that?
That is accurate, Mayor. The grid in this area, we're part of what we call the MAP region, is kind of this upper Midwest region, and the biggest user of energy in that area is the cities. And so generally power flows into the city because that's where most of it is being used.
And we're just tapping into the line kind of
as it goes by.
As it goes by our area. 30 megawatts, how does that compare to the total generation of that proposed plant?
The plant they have not made a final determination. It'll either be a 500 or a 580 megawatt plant.
Okay, and we're trying to tap into 30.
30 of them.
Last year when we were out in Washington, D.C., we met with Colin Peterson, our congressman, and he was musing with us, kind of talking and thinking out loud. He said, what Willmar should consider is a corn-burning generation plant. Has there been any discussion about that as an alternative fuel for generation? He's very curious about that because of his position on the Ag Committee.
We promised him we would look at that meeting, if you recall, we promised him that we would look at that, and we are looking at all of these alternatives. We spent a lot of time now looking at corn. And there are studies underway at the University of Minnesota and Morris at this time. Some of these things are way out. And the problem, I mentioned, some of it is storage and harvesting. What do you use? The BTUs you get out of it. So, yes, we're going to and have been evaluating all of those technologies that we understand are available. Many of them won't be available for some time.
I want your commission to really take a hard look at that because he was very interested in that. He's looking for a model of generation that he could promote, through his Ag Committee. And if we had any possibility of that, I mean, that could be a wonderful relationship between Willmar and the U.S. Ag Committee.
Correct.
So really take a hard look at that and maybe talk to his office once in a while and keep informed that way.
One other thing I maybe should mention is that those two entities that withdrew, they were paying for development costs for quite a period of time now. We get the benefit of that because we get to jump in and pick up this extra 21 megawatts of power, and we don't have to pay them for the development that they've put in. So we benefit in that way as well.
All right. Well, just a final comment then, Bob and Bruce. Thank you for your explanation and keeping us informed. I have been told that recently we have been notified that the utilities is getting some help from the federal government in the amount of $300,000 to help with this planning and studying. Is that correct? And so that really helps us to keep moving in this direction. Well done, fellas. Thank you. Bruce, anything else before we close this off?
No.
Okay, do you want to make
just a motion to approve the MUC minutes of December 31st?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the Municipal Utilities Commission minutes of December 31st, 2007. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Again, thanks, Bob and Bruce. Jerry, thank you. All right, we are now down to our legislative update, and this is the opportunity to hear from David Turch and his associate Kodiak about what's going on in Washington, D.C., and they come bearing very good news. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. It's a real pleasure to be here this evening, and I thank you all for allowing me to take up some of your time. Willmar had a very successful year this year. $15 million in the WRDA bill, which is the Water Resources Development Act. $141,700, which is $141,700 for the gang enforcement. $23,500 for meth education, and as Mayor Heitke said, $300,000 for the municipal utility power generation study. Now, I just want to quickly, I'm sure, as you all know, the WRDA, Water Resources Development Act, that's an authorization. It's not an appropriation. They're different. Authorization committees are different than the Appropriations Committee. Basically, what that means is Willmar has been authorized to spend $15 million on the wastewater treatment facility. So our next step will be to take that to the Appropriations Committee, which is Chairman Obey, our neighbor in Wisconsin. So that looks very good. In other legislative news, and as Mayor Heitke had mentioned, Chairman Peterson, who is your representative, he's been hard at work on the Ag Bill this year, which is a 5-year, comes along every 5 years. And that has passed the House and the Senate. It's in conference, and President Bush is expected to sign it into law. March 15th is what they're expecting. So he's been hard at work on that, and as David, my boss, likes to say, that bill affects the entire world. As far as other legislative news, 2008 is, as you all know, it's an election year, so that kind of changes the climate in Washington. It makes it even more political than it usually is. Senator Coleman's up for re-election, and of course, Chairman Peterson and Chairman Oberstar as well, and all the members of the House, a third of the members of the Senate, and of course, presidential elections, which I'm sure have been fascinating to watch. And as I said earlier today, if I had put money on the Iowa caucuses, I would have lost a little bit of money. But that's basically what's going on right now. So it's going to be an interesting year, and we're really looking forward to working with Willmar and to having another successful year and working in close conjunction with you all. So if there are any questions or concerns, the hard questions I think should go to David Turch, not me. I mean, I was brave enough to come out to Minnesota in January, and I have to admit, the 40-degree weather it's nice. It's not so bad. Washington's 70 degrees right now, but I pretty much have a trunk full of warm winter clothing with me. So, any questions this evening?
Council members, anybody want to ask something? Or I had a question and it slipped away. Let me just think here a second. It was a comment more. You know, the good results that Kodiak is sharing with us, the council tonight, you know, didn't happen yesterday. I mean, this process began 3 years ago, probably, maybe 3 years ago at least, when the council decided what would be the priority projects. They were given to our lobbying team in Washington, and it's a relationship approach. You know, the ideas are generated, the proposals are put forward, and sometimes it takes a while for the stew to kind of ferment and boil, and now we get the good results. I mean, this is a tremendous message about the good work that they're doing and the help that we're getting from Washington to this city. I mean, this is an incredible. And I have mentioned this before when we talk with other mayors. You know, they keep asking, how does Willmar do that? How do you get those grants? And how does this work? because they hear about this stuff from the outside, and they think, well, you're not that big a city, you know, how do you guys do this stuff? Well, this is how it's done. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Heike, and we appreciate working with Willmar, and we're really looking forward to having another successful year. So,
Good. David, would you like to offer a couple comments?
No, I'd just like to say that actually the way it's done is because Senator Klobuchar, Senator Coleman, and Chairman Peterson work so hard on your behalf, and we're just happy to be incremental in that whole team.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilmember Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the work you've done for us. I remember when you were here in the fall, whenever that was, we talked a little bit about quiet zones and how that was maybe moving forward. What do you think might be the likelihood of Willmar getting some sort of funds for quiet zones?
We were meeting a little bit earlier this evening with some of the city staff, talking about your list of priorities for next year, and quiet zones were mentioned. So it'll be a project we'll begin to undertake. We talked about it. As you know, we have, as a firm, very strong rail interests, representing, for instance, Southern California Regional Rail Authority. That is all rail, both Class 1 freights and passenger, as it moves through the Los Angeles Basin, no small enterprise. So we're pretty familiar with how the FRA works. We're familiar with quiet zones. We'd like to bring some of that expertise to this community, and we'll see what happens this year. But we're embarking on that project. It began in the fall when we were here. We've been talking about it, and you get to set the priorities. That's above our pay grade, so we'll see if it's on your list.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dockin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for coming. You spoke just now about priorities from the staff, and quiet zones being one of those. Could you tell us what the other priorities the staff gave you?
Well, I haven't seen the list yet, so I don't know.
but that's on you.
We've talked about continuation of some of our other efforts, and particularly we addressed the appropriations process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was our request that the list be drawn up.
Anyone else? Doug?
I guess I've got, and as I'm sitting here, I'm appreciative of what you have done for us. I can recall when Congressman Peterson opened his office in town, he said to me, if you can get Turch and Associates, he says, you've got somebody on your side that's going to do a job for you. But he said, it's going to be tough to get them. They've been working for St. Cloud, but I think it's going to be tough to get them. And I'm glad we got you on board. I've gone along with Ken Warner and a few other council people and come out and visited with our senators and our representatives in regards to not something that's not within our city, but is very, very vital to our city, and that's Highway 23. And I firmly believe that ground transportation is very vital to the economic growth and industrial growth within our city. And with our new industrial park being built, not only Highway 23, but you probably don't have a lot to do with this, but if you can do anything to convince BNSF to build a spur that loops around and comes from the, for the lesser of my knowledge, the Highway 23 rail line to the Highway 12 rail line and come through our industrial park so that we had a spur going through our industrial park. Those two things, I think, are very key in the development of our industrial park. So anything that you hear, anything that you can do would be greatly appreciated in that area.
Keep it on the list.
Anyone else? Councilmember DeBleek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not so much a question, just maybe a couple comments here. And thank you for being here, Mr. Turch, and bringing this information back. But I think it's also important you to come to Willmar. I think it's just as important for us to go to Washington occasionally and meet with our senators and representatives and bring that so they can hear the message directly from us, and you can carry on at that point there in Washington to keep bringing good news back here to Willmar for us. So I know myself and the mayor and Councilmember Reese have been out in Washington a number of occasions and met with our representatives and senators out there, and it's a very pleasant experience to do that. So,
I would like to encourage our council members to think about that. We do send our city staff out there once in a while, but perhaps we, and I think we should send an elected official out there. So keep that in mind. It was interesting when when these projects were approved, at least in the authorization stage, we received phone calls from Congress Colin Peterson's office, from his policy director, Robin Gorecki. I received a call from Senator Norm Coleman personally. I received a call from the staff person of Senator Klobuchar. And I think Mick also got some phone calls at City Hall. So they are very, very pleased to give us this news and to encourage us to keep working with them. And I think Willmar has a good relationship with our congressional delegates like that. And then we all, we weave all this stuff together with David and his staff and Cody, and things get done. But it takes time and it takes a relationship. David and Cody, thank you very much for coming to Willmar. I know you're very busy. You've got other things you have to get on the road for, but thanks for coming out here, and we will see you in Washington, D.C., some of us at least. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll look forward to it.
Thanks. And just to repeat, that was $23,500 for methamphetamine services to get that out of our community, $141,700 for the gang enforcement team at the police department, $300,000 for the MUC study for their generation plant, and $15 million for the wastewater treatment plant. All right, we are now down to number 6 on the agenda, or number 7, which is the scheduled public hearing, and that public hearing is now open. This is an ordinance, or a recommended ordinance, amending the Willmar ordinance number 1192 by establishing a franchise fee with CenterPoint Energy. And who's going to introduce that?
Well, I can make a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Kevin, please.
Council, you have before you the ordinance for the establishment of a fee at various rates. We'll point out the rates. The CenterPoint has these energy rate classes with monthly fees. They are residential for $2 a month, commercial A, $3.50, commercial B, $8, commercial C, $15, small volume dual fuel A, $30 per month, small volume dual fuel B, $40 per month, and large volume dual fuel, $95 a month. We're anticipating that the franchise shall pay the fees to the city quarterly, with the first quarter collections due in April 30th, the April-June collections due by July 31st, the July-September collections due October 31st, and the fourth quarter October to December collections due by January 1st of the following year. The further Section 4 on the permit fees. This franchise fee proposal here is to have this paid to the City of Willmar in lieu of a permit and other fees that are now being charged to CenterPoint Energy. And we have that in our right-of-way ordinance, where they pay a variety of fees for every time they enter. And that fee will be in exchange and no longer being received. So those are the highlights, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Mick, Kevin just went through the proposed ordinance. Do you want to offer any comments before we open it up for comment from the public? All right. At this time, the public hearing is open. If somebody wishes to comment about this, please indicate that. Ken, please. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. Mayor Heitke, members of the council. My name is Ken Warner. I live at 1216 11th Street Southeast right here in Willmar. And appearing before you tonight, trying to get some clarification on the franchise fee, that when this was originally discussed, the Chamber of Commerce, we weren't too excited about another fee, but we're willing to listen, and we're actually asked to be part of the discussions. And as you were reminded a couple meetings ago, that two of the key components of this, one was that we didn't really want to see this just go into the general budget. We thought that if the dollars were to be raised, it should be earmarked for a project. And in addition to that, we thought it was very important that once that project was paid for, that the fee should sunset. Again, this is very, very similar to our position that we had with the local option sales tax both times, that we felt that that was very important. And looking at the ordinance that you have before you tonight, when you read through the ordinance, there is no definition of where the funds are to be spent, just that the city will collect them and collect them on a quarterly basis. And then when you look at the provision that talks about the sunset, the word sunset's not even in there. It's called a review. And there's a huge difference between what's there right now with the local option sales tax and this proposed ordinance. I know that they're two different things. But when it reads that the City Council shall review this ordinance every 2 years in either a work session or a regular session, failure to review this ordinance shall not in any way invalidate or limit the ordinance. So in our eyes, when you look at that, it means it could go on forever, because there's going to be other projects that come up, other issues, and it's just going to be an ongoing fee. And so, in the spirit of cooperation, I guess I'm here tonight saying what happened to the earmarked dollars and what happened to the sunset provision.
All right. Thank you, Ken.
Yep, thank you.
Anyone else? Please come up to the microphone.
Good evening. John Sullivan, 508 Southeast 13th Street, Willmar. I have the utmost respect for Mr. Anderson, his proposal, but I'm here to speak against it. And the number one reason is a fee is a tax, no matter how you say it, how you look at it. Number two, where do you stop with fees? Who's to say that, hey, we don't tax our citizens for what we need, let's just add a fee. Put it on gas pumps, whatever. I'm not saying that would ever be done, but you have the ability to put a fee on anything, as far as I know. Number three, I think it's most important, I've heard the argument that by having a fee and not a tax on gas meters, we are getting money from people who don't pay taxes. And I'm considering, I think you mean churches, schools, city buildings, municipal buildings, all those that are tax-free. We're already paying for them through our taxes. So we're actually paying for our own meter plus these other meters. I don't think that's quite right. I think the hospitals and the schools, the churches, they're not taxed for a reason. And I don't think a fee is a tax, you're going to tax them now. I don't think that's the way to do it. Because it's just not right the way to do it. And number four, I talked to Mr. Twintek this morning. The proposal was to try to raise $250,000, and he said the most you'll get is $226,000 per year. And based on that, if it takes 10 years to get enough money to do the flood plan, which is I think this money has been designated for, and I've been told that, and I think that's what it is. But in 10 years, when you have enough money to do it, because it'll probably be a $2.5 million project right now. In 10 years, it might be $4 million. So what do we do then? Find another fee? I think we should infrastructure, bond, whatever needs to be done now to fix the problem. Because if it takes 10 years to fix the problem, what's to say that we're not going to have another war in Jorgensen in 4 years if we don't fix it now? And I don't think a fee is the way to do it. I think if we need to levy a tax for it, take it out of excess funds, whatever the case may be, that should be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Jerry?
Jerry Gesh, 1200 Southeast Willmar Avenue. Mr. Mayor, councilpersons, as a lifelong resident of Willmar, I've been aware of the concern of, or the threat of heavy rains coming into Willmar here. It's going to happen again. There's more and more building going on in our town. When the big rains come, and they will eventually, there's going to be a lot of damage if this Grass Lake proposal isn't taken care of. It has to be taken care of. What else can we do with a large influx of water in this town? The economic, health, and ecological concerns that this will make a big, big difference in has to be taken care of. I feel that there should be a sunset on this, and the reason is these monies should be dedicated to this proposal till it's finished. And if we don't put a sunset on it, I think there will be fingers into these monies, and it'll be drug out even further. We've been talking about this for many years. It's time that we really get serious on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Anyone else? If no one else wishes to address the council, then I will close the public hearing. And now the matter comes up for discussion at the City Council table. Council members? Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for staff here. I guess I'm a little surprised as well that nowhere in this ordinance do we talk about what this is to be dedicated for. And starting in early fall, it was always to be dedicated to flood, stormwater, and Grass Lake. And how do we know that with the ordinance the way that it's written? Or do we need to amend it?
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we looked at a number of different examples of ordinances in communities that have implemented these franchise fees, and we worked with Minigasco. We actually considered the input, as Mr. Warner stated, from the chamber membership, and devised this resolution. And I believe that it has not changed since it was introduced by the council a couple weeks ago. And at that point, there was, I don't think there was any discussion about go back to the drawing table and include the word sunset and include the language that designates it for stormwater improvements. In response to Mr. Anderson's two specific points, I think that this language about review was opted for in lieu of sunset because it's the kind of language that was appearing in most of the other ordinances that we were looking at that had any semblance of a sunset provision. What this does is it requires that the City Council review this on a regular basis, but it falls short of sunsetting. It does not, I guess, lock future councils into doing anything specific about it at some point in the future. And then it does not specifically address stormwater detention. I don't think it has to. The City Council can designate those dollars, those revenues, just like you do any other revenue that comes in. You designate it for the general fund, the wastewater treatment plant, whatever the case may be. We don't do all of those by ordinances.
Go ahead, Dennis.
It provides flexibility.
Well, You know, you mentioned when it was introduced for a hearing, there wasn't any discussion, and there wasn't. I didn't think that that was necessarily the time to do it, but, I mean, I want the fee. But I want the fee, and I want to make sure it's dedicated for what the council, not unanimously, but the council passed, that it was going to be used for a specific purpose. And we did, and we've never deviated from that. We don't talk about that at all here. And I'm very concerned about that. The review, maybe not such a big issue. I think that the council knows what that's all about, but there's nothing here that talks about what this is to be used for. And I'm very concerned about that.
Other council members? Councilmember Dockett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't support the franchise fee. I think first and foremost we need to wait until we get the bar engineering study that will describe for us the total need that we have for infrastructure needs, ponds. This just does not take care of what we need to take care of. In talking with Sam Moderman and with Mr. Halliday, I'm told we have about $990 million in accessible property in our city. And so I would suggest that we would rather look at an increase in ad valorem taxes or placing a special assessment on. But to go at $226,000 or whatever it is per year, when we don't even know in total what it's going to cost. In 2005, I think we were told that Grass Lake was going to cost $5.2 million, and we got, I think, $1.3 million in capital bonding money. Our part and the county's part was $1.3 million, and so those are more realistic figures. We know that we're going to have to spend about $5.2 million for Grass Lake. And so whatever our part's going to be, we need to make sure we have enough money, and my preference would be either increasing ad valorem taxes or putting a special assessment on.
Anyone else? Councilmember Reese.
The biannual review, is that something that would come up in as an agenda item to one of the committees? Is that how it would be done then? Or does it come? I'm just wondering how it works so that I understand it.
Well, it suggests in the ordinance that it either comes up at a work session or a regular meeting of the city council, but it can certainly pass through the committee process. I don't.
Well, all I'm looking for is the trigger. I mean, what's going to bring it about?
I think every year when you do the budget will be the trigger.
Okay.
Just like taxes, you ask yourself, is the amount we are levying sufficient to pay for the services that we're wanting to provide? You'll ask yourself the same question, do we need to continue this franchise fee as a revenue? We do it with the cable television. I don't have that ordinance in front of me, but I do not believe the ordinance that sets the cable franchise fee specifically earmarks those dollars for our RAC 8 programming. But we know every year that when we collect that franchise fee on cable, it's used to support our public television programming.
We had that battle a few years ago.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Councilmember Anderson?
Can this franchise fee ordinance be amended tonight?
Have to go through a public hearing again.
I think to designate it for a specific purpose and include that language, that that would require us to republish. I think that's more than a minor change.
Okay.
Councilmember Reese.
Could it be just a motion that dovetails to the ordinance itself, designating?
Well, you can pass the ordinance and make a motion or pass a resolution. That motion or resolution is not binding on future councils, however. But then in the same sense, neither is the ordinance. That ordinance could be changed years from now. Other councils could possibly have other priorities and other ways of looking at things.
Not unlike, again, the cable.
Councilmember DeBleek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to make a comment that view this as not being unlike the cable franchising agreement that we have, for which we do charge a fee for. It's a fee for the gas company to use the public right-of-ways and public property to place their gas lines within the city of Willmar. That is what the fee is established for. And I would think, rather than to have too much verbiage in this ordinance and tied to ordinance, it would be better to for the council to set its intent as to how to expend the monies collected from the fee by motion.
Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to make the comment that I appreciate very much Chairman Anderson's work on this coming through the Finance Committee. I think it's a good plan. I think it's visionary. I think it's solid. Councilmember Anderson and others on the council agree that we need to begin addressing these stormwater issues now. Ask the residents of 10th and Candio High and other neighborhoods in our city if we have done the right type of due diligence by them. Ask them if we have done what we were supposed to do in protecting their lives and protecting their neighborhoods. We know that we have a city that is prone to these types of problems. And it's the time for sitting by and doing nothing has long since passed. In the words of Dr. Phil, how's that been working for you? And it's really not been doing very well. I've heard some complaint about this isn't a fair way to do it. I don't know that there's any fair way to take public money and use it for a public purpose. If you take a look at taking tax money simply from a standpoint of fairness, if you look at where the origination of tax dollars come from, and this is from Kevin's annual report, in 1996, 49.2% of the dollars to the city generated from property taxes came from commercial and industrial property. 49.2% came from ag, residential, and apartment properties. In 2006, industrial and commercial properties were only 35.5%, and the ag, residential, and apartment properties were 64.5%. Now, we can debate the fairness of those numbers all day long. There is no great way to do this in terms of addressing a fairness issue. Finally, and I think this is extremely important and extremely pertinent, I believe that a no vote says to the public that we're not willing to take this on, that we're not willing to take decisive action for our city's future. If we don't get a handle on the stormwater issues, I believe that it creates not just problems for residential growth, but it creates problems for commercial and industrial growth as well. If we've got no place to put it, if we've got no way to look forward and say, this is what we need to do, if we don't begin funding this now, if we're just going to wait and maybe get more information, then we're failing the public in this regard. I don't think that we can afford to wait any further. We need to begin funding this, and if you're for a solution to this, then a yes vote to fund this is the first step.
Anyone else? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me preface what I'm going to say by telling you that I am against this franchise fee, and don't put words in my mouth, Mr. Gardner. Voting no for this doesn't mean we don't want to solve the flooding problem over at 10th and Candy Ojai. We have money to do that. We've been putting millions of dollars away into rainy day funds my 14 years on this council. And the money's there. We just have to decide whether or not we want to use it. We're told by the mayor that it will maybe diminish our bond rating. I don't believe that, because that money was set aside for rainy days, and let's use it. Second of all, in this whole discussion on this ordinance, every meeting we've had on it, Councilman Anderson is right. We, those for this ordinance, have said that we want to sunset it, and it should be dedicated to the flooding problem, Grass Lake, etc. Why it's not in here, I don't know. I don't know if staff didn't listen or somebody didn't listen, but it should be in here. There is no reason why it's not in here, even though I'm against the entire ordinance. If we want to fix any of our problems, let's put the tax on the city property like Councilman Dockin suggested. The entire city pays for it. That way, we have flooding problems all over, not just on the west end of Willmar. That way, it's more of a fair tax, a fair fix to the problem. As far as getting the churches and nonprofits to pay, what are we saying here? They don't pay taxes for a reason. And it's our decision for them not to pay taxes. Churches and nonprofits spend their money on other and better things, helping people, helping the community. We don't need to be taxing their meters. My take on this is just another grab for money by government. I personally think all governments won't be happy until they take all of our money and then distribute it back to us and tell us how much we can have. I am tired of looking at the revenue side of the problems that we have. We just went through our budget process. I don't recall a whole lot of talking about spending and where to cut. But we need to be talking about that in all of our budget processes. A no vote for this ordinance is the proper vote.
Councilmember Gardner, then Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We just finished a budget process. This was the only plan brought forward by any council member to do anything about solving a citywide problem. It's not just specific to 10th and Candy Ojai. It is a citywide problem, and it deserves a citywide answer. I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth, but I think it's extremely accurate to say that actions speak louder than words. We can say all day long that we're for a solution, but if we're unwilling to fund it, then perhaps the proof is in the pudding.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I go back again to how this all started. You know, we had the residents here that had all their issues and the problems. We knew we had to do something. So we looked for possible ideas. This was an idea that we came up with. And it has always been discussed as being for stormwater, flood control, and Grass Lake. Now, I'm hearing that we can go ahead and pass this ordinance as it is, then turn right around and have a motion that supplements that and says that's what that's to be used for. This council, this body knows that. You know, times change, people change. I hope that future councils would recognize that that's what it's for. And I don't think, just on another note, we don't need to have the full amount of money that it's going to take to solve the problem in hand before we do it. I mean, you need to look at bonding or something. We'd have an income source to do that with. So I think we can move forward. The other thing that we've always said is we will move forward when we have a solid plan in place. You know, we're looking at options and ideas right now. There may be other options and ideas that'll come forward later. I believe we need to do this. It's a painful thing to do. It's the right thing to do, and if this passes, I will be making a motion to clarify the intent of this ordinance.
All right. It looks like the discussion is winding down. Are you ready to vote on this?
Did we have a motion?
We haven't had a motion. That's right. We need a
I
motion.
would move to give the ordinance a number, adopt it, and publish it, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion, and it's been seconded for a resolution to establish an ordinance to establish a franchise fee. Further discussion about that. Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The sunset provision that isn't in here, I don't think ever was intended to be in here, and this money, once collected, will always be collected. I recall in 1998, the city decided to pay off the bonds for the Civic Center. It was a 20-year bond, and we paid them off early. We continued to collect the money, the tax, to pay for that in subsequent years, and I believe we still are, if I'm not mistaken. And that money, at that time, we dedicated it to, wasn't it the new airport?
Industrial park.
Industrial park?
Development.
Development. And that money has been accumulating, I'm assuming.
Well, it was spent on the airport project.
Okay. So then it will continue to accumulate as we continue to collect it. And those funds could be dedicated toward the flooding problem also. I forget the amount per year, Mr. Okens, maybe you...
It was $151,000.
Okay. We never sunsetted that. We're still paying that. I think we all agreed back then that we would put it toward the airport at the time. But once we get our hands on money, we don't let go. Folks, it's ridiculous.
Anyone else? Are you ready to vote? The resolution is on the table. It's been seconded to establish this new ordinance. Kevin, roll call.
Councilmember Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
No.
Anderson.
Aye.
Swenson.
No.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
No.
DeBleek.
Aye.
4 ayes, 3 nays. Ordinance fails.
The resolution passes.
That failed,
Failed.
Mr. Mayor.
5 votes.
Every
Five
five.
votes. The resolution fails.
The ordinance failed.
The ordinance fails. Well, we have no funding system for flood control unless we change the budget again. I guess this will have to go back to the Finance Committee for more discussion. And,
Mr. Mayor?
We move on then.
You got a question?
Who has a question? Mr. Dockett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible that at some future Finance Committee meeting that we could discuss the pros and cons of funding stormwater either through an ad valorem tax increase or a special assessment?
You want to raise taxes? Is that what you're proposing?
I'm asking that we discuss it, okay?
I heard you say earlier you wanted to raise taxes.
I think it's necessary to raise taxes, yes.
It's the first time I've ever heard you say that, Jim. That we should be raising taxes.
We need to fix the stormwater problem, and if it means raising taxes, that's what we need to do.
Well, we can send that back to a committee for more discussion. Councilmember Anderson.
We'll take that back to the Finance Committee, and I'm not sure what the appropriate timing is going to be on that, Councilmember Dockin. It might be something that goes into the budget process for '09. I don't know what special assessments, I don't know what that would involve or entail. We will learn some of those things in the Finance Committee.
And, Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
Could we also discuss the $151,000 from the Civic Center and see if that's available for use?
Mr. Mayor,
That money is not
the
there.
City Council made a conscious decision a number of years ago to discontinue putting that money into the Industrial Development Fund, and it has long been since rolled into the general fund. Probably 3 or 4 years now, maybe?
We can certainly give a history on that.
Yeah.
The idea is that it's still being rolled in.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Anderson.
You know, the Finance Committee spends a lot of time talking about just this very sort of thing when we're developing the budget. That's the time to talk about some of these things. We didn't have any of those inputs, ideas, and suggestions. We only had one idea. So I guess we'll look at it for the 2009 budget.
All right. That will put a damper on the discussion about Grass Lake. County is counting on the city to participate. That's not going to be there.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, but we can still participate.
Not in this year's budget.
How is it that so many times we can ask staff to find money for whatever and they find it?
Not in the amounts that Grass Lake is talking about.
I didn't say any amount. We go to them constantly. Well, staff will find the money for something. We ask them, Mr. Olkins, Mr. Schmidt, they come up with it, whether it's $20,000, $50,000, $120,000. We seem to find the money. I know it's there. I think the rest of the council knows it's there. We just refuse to use it. We do have rainy day funds, and they can start a project, and we can think about 09's budget and funding it somehow else in 09, but we have the money to start fixing this project. And if you tell me you don't, I won't believe you.
Well, it depends how you look at the financial stability of the city. You know, there is money set aside, but that's what keeps the city stable. You know, if we start digging into these reserve funds, you know, we begin to look less and less stable financially. And our bond rating goes down, our interest rates go up. That's what happens. Sure, you know, we can take money, but then our bond ratings go up and it costs the citizens more money that way. That way. That's what happens. All right. The council has voted. This resolution fails. We will move on in the agenda. Next is the Community Development Committee report for December 20th.
Open forum, Mr. Mayor.
Open forum.
Oh, okay. The Willmar City Council open forum. Does anybody wish to address the council tonight? Terry, come on up and introduce yourself. Welcome, Terry.
My name is Terrell Reamer. Everyone calls me Terry. I live at 416 Southwest 11th Street. I am the current president of the Willmar Civil Service Police Commission. We are facing a dilemma here, and I'm not trying to be any kind of confronting anyone here tonight, but we need to come to some kind of a decision what to do with the police commission. Last February, first surfaced that at our annual meeting that there was a need to abolish the police commission. came just out of left field for us. We were kind of blindsided by it. It has been going on now since last February. We've had seven meetings, and 6 of those meetings have been discussions about abolishment of the police commission. In July 16th meeting, the commission unanimously voted to keep the commission in place. Went to the Labor Relations Committee meeting on September 12th, and we seem to be that we're not making any progress whatsoever as to where we're going. We've lost one of our members who declined to be reappointed, so we are down to 2 members. The law states that there should be 3 members, or shall be 3 members appointed by the mayor and by the city council each year, or there's 1 reappointed each year. And I'm due to be done in August. My term is up. So we'll be down to 1 member. And there's a discussion, I guess, about taking and abolishing the police commission and making it a advisory panel for the police force in town here. Again, I say we're against that. We voted unanimously that we do not want to do that. We want to keep the commission in its place. The big thing that I am concerned about, and I haven't heard from any committee member to say, yeah, we're working on getting another member for you, or this is the direction we are going. It seems to be there's just nothing happening whatsoever. And what got me alarmed was, and this is from our minutes in November. Chief Colsett explained that the city administrator had informed him the mayor would not be making a recommendation at this time until the city council decides if they want the commission to stay as is or become an advisory board. It seems like there's nothing going on with that. I could live if this council voted to say we want to get rid of the commission. I could live with that. I would not like that, but I could live with that. Some decision has to be made, and that's all we're asking you to do. If I leave in August, we're down to 1 member. We can't do business. Under the present rules, you couldn't hire any police officers because we wouldn't be able to hold any of our meetings. You know, all we are is an oversight. The law says that we have the power, absolute authority over all hiring, firing, and discipline within the police department. I've been on this commission for 5 years, and we have not exercised any of it. It's just been an oversight. The chief reports that any disciplinary things, which we haven't had any, we have some excellent, excellent officers here. We have an excellent police force. But we need to fill this position. Either that, or it takes a unanimous vote of the city council to get rid of the police commission, to abolish it, or a 2/3 vote of all the citizens. So I'm asking you tonight that we have some action going forward with this, and that it be resolved quickly. We've been going on for a year now, trying to do our job. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Has the police commission, Stephen, discussed in the labor committee?
It has, and I suspect that if we get to the discussion a little later on that was previously tabled from the previous meeting, that we might talk about that potentially being a point that perhaps a charter commission would look at.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else on the city council open forum? Jerry, come on up.
Could I go back to the water concerns again?
You can say whatever you like.
Okay. It was mentioned earlier this evening about the value of the taxable property here. I think that's in risk when we don't address this particular concern here. It was mentioned the rainy day fund. This is one case where we can be proactive rather than, or preactive rather than proactive. You know, I mean, it's just a twist on words, but that money's there. It's a way. You know, if we can't go one way, we should move ahead on another way. This is a case I feel strongly, either we pay now and work now, or we'll pay later as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, residents, staff. My name is Laura Becker, and I live at 1010 Candido High Avenue Southwest. And I've been here before. Most of you see me at quite a few meetings. I am concerned. I sat at the Public Works meeting last week, and the city engineer on his project list for 2008 was only listed the storm ponds at Garfield School. Nowhere in that plan was mentioned anything about 10th and Candido High. When the engineer was questioned in regards to the plan, having a plan, having any idea how much water it would hold, about anything with the approval of the school, what we were told at that Public Works meeting was there is no plan, as staff was to be developing it. The staff members had no idea how much water that pond would hold, and they did not have okay from the school to even use the property at Garfield because the school will not listen to your proposed plan until you have a plan that you can submit to them. I have been coming here since my house was flooded in August of last year. I sat here and I listened now again about the franchise fee. I am an extremely frustrated taxpayer. I sat in that Public Works meeting and I realized that nowhere was 10th and Candido High or the Jorgensen's home on any projected plans for this year, 2008. I've now sat here in this meeting being told by Councilman Anderson that any stormwater issues might not be resolved or be on a budget until 2009. I can tell all of you right now, your phone numbers are taped to my pantry door, and when we get a major rain, you will all get a call from me. I have photos of the damage that was done in August when you came out afterwards to see the damage. I will call you when the street is rising, and you may come then and look at it. Because I stand here tonight telling you that if it were any of your homes going through this project, this plan, something would be happening. I'm a taxpayer here. I'm extremely upset, Mr. Mayor, that you sit up here and you talk to us about how important it is for our bond rating to stay where it is, when your council people tell you that you have the money there to fix a problem. You are destroying my property. You are knowingly and willfully doing that. You have the money, and yet you are choosing to do nothing other than worry about a bond rating. You are destroying more than my home in the city of Willmar. I will continue to go to these meetings. I am waiting for a response from you, my elected officials, my paid staff, that I, as a taxpayer, am contributing to their salaries. I am waiting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for the Christmas wish.
Your name and address, please.
Lauren Schultz, 901 Irene Avenue.
Thanks, Lauren.
Southeast. I met with Lauren Ingleby last week, Joe Gemsey, and Mr. Dockin was present. And we discussed Grass Lake, what's going to go on. We have to dig settling ponds before it enters Grass Lake. That's pollution control standards now. They'll be deciding how many acres on the inside the bypass, the outside the bypass, for the volume of water in Willmar. And been after pollution control to make a move on this for 3 years. Well, they're finally coming around. And very slow, but they're finally getting on board. And anyway, last winter I made a proposal to you. Yeah, I talked to Ron about it, and I talked to you about it, and Mel Odens. And my proposal was that you should purchase a cat backhoe to put the sewer project in. It's $80 million for your sewer project, because we can get a better bids on our $80 million project, solve our money problems, because we're spending too much money doing what we need to do. And apparently the city council didn't like my idea. So I thought, well, if you turn me down, better have plan B, so we get started. So I went and saw my banker. And I said to the banker, I said, how many banks is there in Willmar? Well, there's 8 of us, he said. I said, okay, this backhoe is $900,000. I said, okay, how about a donation from each bank, $100,000 each? That'd give you $800,000, the rest I'll get from the wildlife. We'll purchase the hoe, put it on your sewer project at no cost. Here's the reason why. It'll cost the banks less money to donate $100,000 each to purchase this backhoe than to repossess the houses after they flooded and collapsed and whatever goes on because of the water problem. I don't need the backhoe in the summer because the soft ground out there won't carry it. I need it all winter, because then I can go out there in the frost and dig. It doesn't matter how thick the frost is, it'll dig it anyway. And start getting started on this. Very little money invested to start, but you got to have land. Without land, we can always lease purchase the machine, or there's private citizens here that'll put up the money. There's people in town here that got enough money to write the check for this. All they need is a little direction. We're all willing to work with the Soil Conservation, DNR, Army Corps of Engineers, and everybody else. All we got to do is put it together. We are all paying for and getting nothing. Surveying and time spent after years and years and getting nowhere. Get the land bought. Buy it on a contract for deed. Get the permits. Let's get started. We should have been digging the last 3 winters when it's warm temperatures, no snow. Could have dug all winter. You can always haul the dirt away. That ain't a problem. You can haul that summer, winter. It's best if you let the piles weep out so they're dry, so you're hauling 30% less because the water's out of them. They're dry. The dirt can go back on farm fields or fill in gravel pits or whatever. This isn't a problem getting rid of the material. But as our fuel costs go higher, we have to be more efficient. And if we're going to attract business, when that 23 bypass gets done, all they have to do between Spicer and St. Cloud is brush off the grass.
Lauren, what's your final point?
And they can start building. We can't compete in the business world if all we got to offer people is water and problems. I was sure that there's pelleting plant would go through. That would have been a good industry here. And 90-mile radius of business would come into that, and we lost it. Are we not affordable, or what happened there? I know there was dispute about the land. It wasn't in the right place, for a lot of reasons,
Lauren, I'm going to ask you to wind it up here. We normally give people 3 minutes. You had more than 10 minutes already, so.
Okay. Well, let's get started. We can lease purchase. All we have to do is pick up the phone and call Caterpillar. I've talked with them about this extensively. It's that simple. Just get the land bought. Let's work with the soil conservation and the guys that are doing the footwork. They're ready to go. We can wait for the money to come. We just need to get started. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we will then move on the agenda to number 10, the Community Development Committee report for December 20th. Councilmember DeBleek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item on our community agenda was the Mayor's Housing Task Force recommendations. The committee reviewed and discussed recommendation offered by the Mayor's Housing Task Force. Was the consensus of the committee that as the educational process unfolds, all educational information should be printed for distribution in 3 languages. The committee addressed recommendations in the order offered by the Mayor's Housing Task Force. Section 1 of that recommendation, the committee discussed amending the exterior maintenance ordinances with stricter standards. Was of the opinion that staff could maintain a complaint-based system of enforcement for these types of violations. After discussion, there was a motion made to have staff draft amendments to the exterior maintenance ordinance and bring the matter back to the council for ordinance adoption. And I'll introduce that recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second that the staff draft amendments to the exterior maintenance ordinance and bring the matter back to the council for the ordinance adoption process. Further comment about this? That's a motion, Kevin. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Section 2 of the recommendation, because the issues under Section 2, exterior storage and off-street parking, generally fall under the preview of the Planning Commission. Staff suggested that the Commission should review them and offer their comments to the Council. After discussion, there was a motion made by the committee to refer the recommendations in Section 2 to the Planning Commission to draft amendments to the zoning ordinance and bring them back to the council for ordinance adoption. And I'll introduce that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to refer the recommendations in Section 2 of the Housing Task Force report to the Planning Commission to draft amendments to the zoning ordinance and bring them back to the council for the adoption process. Further comment? Those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
There's Section 3 of the recommendation by the Task Force Committee was discussion of animal noise and noise, snow, and the ice section. After discussion, there was a motion to recommend that staff and the city attorney draft amendments to the municipal code and bring them back to the council for ordinance adoption process. I'll introduce that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
There's a motion and a second that the staff and the city attorney draft amendments to the municipal code This was regarding animals, noise, snow, and ice sections, and then bring that back for the adoption process. Further comment? Those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Section 4 of the recommendation by the Task Force Committee, the committee discussed there was the rental housing ordinance recommendations at length, and no action was taken by the Community Development Committee. Rather, personal responsibility and accountability were encouraged in dealing with garbage containers and pickup. Item 2 was airport expenditures discussed by the committee, discussed the ongoing issues of the $1 million state grant for airport expenditures. Staff offered the opinion that reimbursement for land did not look promising at this point. The airport capital improvement program for the next several years was discussed, and staff requested that the council authorize staff to work to amend the previous legislation to allow the city to spend $1 million grant on other airport items. After discussion, the committee recommended that staff pursue an amendment to the 2005 legislative grant the city $1 million for airport expenditures.
Second.
We have a motion and a second asking the staff to pursue an amendment to the 2005 legislation granting the city $1 million for airport expenditures. Further comment about that? Has that been discussed, Mick, with our legislators yet in any capacity?
Not specifically this recommendation, Mr. Mayor, but we have been in contact with them on numerous occasions over the last couple of years trying to gain access to those dollars. And eventually what has happened is we've ended up dealing with a number of people in the various state departments, and the latest information we have from them is that the original intent of the legislation was to reimburse the city for cost overruns on its land acquisition for the new airport, and they're saying, well, you can't do that. So, in other words, we can't use the $1 million from the bond to reimburse ourselves for those cost overruns, which was the actual language in the bill. So now what we're doing here, and we've talked to the Community Development Committee about it, is going back and working with our legislators to amend that bill so that we can access those dollars for other purposes.
All right. Okay, we have a motion. Any other comment? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries.
Item number 3, Mr. Mayor, was vacant lots and new developments. The committee discussed an issue brought up by Councilman Christensen, that an idea of a moratorium on the approval of new residential lots. Mr. Christensen expressed concern about the number of available lots with infrastructure to them and suggested the city was exposing itself to some financial risk by continuing to approve new plats. The committee took no action on that item. I guess if there are no questions, Mr. Mayor, a motion to file the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to file the minutes. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember DeBleek, I'd like to go back to the Mayor Housing Task Force recommendation, Section 4, having to do with the rental housing. And the committee recommended taking no action and just relying on personal responsibility and accountability. How is that different than individual homeowners? Why wouldn't we do the same thing with all segments of our residences?
Well, I don't believe at this point in time that we require an individual homeowner to have garbage service or a garbage container for their property and their pickup. They're not required. And this recommendation by the Housing Task Force was requiring that the owner of the properties furnish a garbage can and garbage pickup for each and every rental property that they managed or owned. And that is the Community Development Committee thought that was a little bit far in excess of what we require even property owners, and felt that that was a personal responsibility of the owners plus the tenants to be able to deal with the garbage that they generate from their properties or their rental houses.
Well, doesn't make sense to me, but I'll leave it at that.
I have a question about vacant lots and new development. Bruce or Mick, do we run into any kind of legal problems with a moratorium? I've not heard that before.
Mayor Heike, members of the council, it's my opinion that if a council is going to adopt a moratorium for virtually any reason, there needs to be a clear and present reason to do so. You would have to make a finding, in my opinion, that there is some demonstrable risk to the city that is present at the time of adopting the moratorium that would give rise to your action to, in fact, take that step. You can debate the risk to the city in these developments all day long. The bottom line is the city has had all this development secured by letter of credit, or at least a portion of it, and this system has been used the past 15 years, and there has not been a default on a property during that time frame.
All right, thanks. Ron, if I can ask you, what's the risk to the city? What is it you're concerned about?
Well, maybe you don't recall back in the 70s and 80s, we got some properties back up in Oslo Heights, Boss Park. We front what, 2/3 of the money for the infrastructure, Bruce? Is that what it is?
Pardon? I did not catch the question.
The city fronts 2/3?
That's correct. It's approximately...
Money for infrastructure?
Yes.
And we have well in excess of 200 empty lots in Willmar. My point on this wasn't strictly a moratorium, but more of a discussion on maybe making the developers pay more of it for any new development over 220 lots or whatever. You pick a number. I'm not so concerned about the 2, 3, 4, 10 lot developments, but when people come in, as have done in the last several years, and put in 40 lots, 50 lots, 30 lots, that's a big development for the city of Willmar. That's really big. Now, in Minneapolis, I can understand it. Out here, I would never do one more than, personally, what I've developed is a block at a time when I've done it. Just 10 lots, 20 lots. That's how Willmar normally grows. We don't grow 50 lots, 70 lots a year. We don't do that. It's never happened here, and I don't think it's going to. It's more of a concern. Could be financial risk for the city. It's there. And if we're fronting infrastructure and, if the one up XYZ development decides to pull out and leave us with these lots, it's our responsibility now to pay for the balance of it, not theirs. And like I say, there's in excess of 200 lots in Willmar, and most of them are big groupings. So there's some risk. There's a risk side to us, and it's something we need to look at. Especially with the downturn in new home construction, it's even more present. I'm not saying it's the answer, but let's sit back and look at this. We can't tell somebody how to spend their money. I mean, if somebody wants to develop 50 lots and they got the money to do it, I guess it's fine. But if we're fronting 2/3 of the money for infrastructure and not knowing that this thing will go, we could be at risk.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. Any other comments before we, Councilmember DeBlee?
The comment, Mr. Mayor, I know Mr. Christensen has said himself that he has lots and developed lots for for development, I would almost think he would exclude himself from this type of discussion with conflict of interest. It seemed to me that would be a direct conflict for what he's doing. If he's a developer and wanting to restrict other developers from not developing lots, I would look at that as a conflict. And I know the city attorney's not here tonight, but to have an opinion on that. But I would think he would restrict himself from even discussing that at the council table.
If it came up for a vote, I'd abstain on the vote. I'm just saying the city should be aware of this. And I believe I can ask Mr. Ronning, but I believe I can participate in any conversation. But if there's a financial gain for myself, I would be out of it as far as voting. And I wouldn't vote on such an item, but we need to be aware of it. I'm the only one here that's aware of it. I don't believe you people, the rest of the council, even knew this until I brought it up. I'm in the industry. I can see it happening.
All right. Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we're going to talk at any point in time about a moratorium, I think, given our decision earlier about stormwater, that the discussion really is moot. That we don't need to worry about new development if we're not willing to take care of the stormwater issues. It's not going to happen.
All right, let's vote on accepting the minutes of the Community Development Committee for December 20th. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Public Works Safety Committee report for January 2nd. Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item on the agenda was a request that we had received from Lakeview Quick Mart, and that was a request for an off-sale 3.2 malt liquor license. And it was referred to our committee by the council. Our city clerk, Kevin Halliday, presented facts for discussion, including the statutes, the hours and days for 3.2 malt liquor sales, and details of selling at retail food stores. And the statutes allow cities of the fourth class to issue an off-sale and on-sale intoxicating liquor license to the same licensee. Willmar's a third-class city, and we may not offer this type of licensing, but may offer off-sale and on-sale 3.2 malt liquor licenses to the same licensee. The committee discussed writing a proposed ordinance to include restrictions on the hours of sale. Also, what if any age restrictions would apply to clerks selling 3.2 malt liquor at licensed places of business. And because of the need to clarify the laws governing the sale of 3.2 malt liquor, this matter was referred back to staff for further information, and it will come back to the committee at our next meeting. So items for information only. The second item was in regards to the Civic Center and the Blue Line Building Connection Project, and it involved a change order number 6, which staff reviewed with the committee. And it's a deduct of $1,120 to the contract with Chester Contracting for the construction of the Civic Center Blue Line Building Connection. And this change order deletes a retaining wall on the south side of the addition. So, Mr. Mayor, I would introduce a resolution to approve change order number 6 for the deduct of $1,120 and authorize the city administrator to sign on behalf of the city.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a resolution for change order number 6 for a deduct of $1,120 at the Civic Center Blue Line Building Connection Project. Further comment? Kevin, is this a roll call? Roll call.
Councilmember Christensen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
Still talking about the Civic Center Blue Line, the connection. Staff informed the committee that there are going to be some technology advancements in that connection where there will be a phone system and video equipment in the foyer area. That's for information only. Third item was the 2008 improvement report, and our staff presented the proposed list of improvements for 2008. And in that list was the reconstruction, overlay, new construction, street lighting, and some miscellaneous projects. They reviewed the streets to be constructed or reconstructed and the miscellaneous items with the committee. This year's improvements include reconstruction of some of our residential streets, an overlay of 15th Street Southwest from 19th Avenue Southwest to 1,365 feet south to coincide with the proposed Don Williamson development, and Minnesota Avenue Southwest from 9th to 10th Street due to the Storm Pond program. New construction of residential lots is being proposed by several developers, and this would include underground utility work and street lighting. Underground utility work is planned in conjunction with the possibility of the county reconditioning Willmar Avenue all the way from 1st Street to 18th Street. And the signals at 24th Avenue Southwest and 1st Street will be studied for justification. And then there'll be some deck maintenance to the 1st Street Bridge, which is a result of inspection by MnDOT. Storm ponds are going to be designed for both Garfield School and then Trott Avenue Southwest near the railroad tracks. And this is in hopes of alleviating the ponding problems at 10th and Candio High. Walk paths are proposed to be extended as well as crack sealing in various areas. After discussion, I'll bring a resolution to order the preparation of the improvement report for the 2008 improvements, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion and a second to order staff to prepare the improvement report for 2008 improvements. Further comment about this? Councilmember Reese?
Just a question with the earlier actions that have been taken, or not taken, I guess I should say. What effect does that have on some of our project pieces here, if any?
For example?
The stormwater stuff, our storm ponds that we were planning at Garfield and Trott.
Well, we're in the process of doing the design work, and we will continue to do that so that if we find a way to finance it, it will be there to be included in the 2008 project.
And the reason we don't know how much water it's going to hold because there hasn't been a design.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Councilmember Dockin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question on the reconstruction of 15th Street Southwest from 19th Avenue to 1,365 feet south to coincide with the proposed Don Williamson development. What's the status of that development?
Councilman Dockin, he had submitted a letter requesting that the city consider that in this year's improvement project, and we are in the process of doing the design.
But he had to make some alterations to his site plan or whatever, the initial document that he brought before the Planning Commission?
That's correct. And I have, we were hoping to get a hold of him this week to discuss it with him to see if he's made those changes.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. Is deck improvement on the bridge, is that a city responsibility?
Yes, it is, since it was turned back, sure.
That's right. They were turned back a couple of years ago. Okay. Any other comments?
Thank you, Bruce.
Councilmember DeBleek.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I've had discussion with some of the Valley Brook residents, and they're concerned about the reconstruction, both the number and the amount of streets out in that neighborhood. I think that the reconstruction area covers just about every street in Valley Brook. I'd like the city engineer to really take a close look at that as he develops his report or project list.
Perhaps you could visit with the city engineer sometime, Councilmember, and discuss that further.
Yes, I will. And then also concerned that there is a more emphasis in this report on the 10th and Candio High ponding water project. I know we need to develop the plans for both the Trot and Garfield ponds as to what impact. And we do not have any contract with Bard Engineering at this time, do we, to be doing any work or anything with those? I know Councilmember Dockin had brought up earlier that there was or alluded to the fact that there was a contract or work going on with Bard. That is not the case, is it, at this time?
The only work that BAR is doing with regard to that or related stormwater activity is out in Grass Lake.
Okay, but that is not a city project at this point.
That's correct. That's through
That's
Bowser.
a county or a Bauer project? Okay.
Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff tells us that they're currently looking at, some of the issues regarding stormwater, and we're still waiting for whatever it is, more information or design work, whatever. Back in November, this council received a letter from the city attorney outlining the process by which we might consider improvements in that 10th and Candio High area if we were looking at potentially purchasing some of those properties for stormwater projects. Are we in the process currently of looking at doing any evaluation of those properties for just that purpose?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the answer to your question is no. In October, when the City Council, or when the Public Works and Safety Committee met, we presented at that time, in addition to the concept of detention ponds, some cost estimates to acquire properties in that neighborhood. In fact, I think I had listed the 6 properties on the west one half of that block that sits between 10th and 11th, the south half of the block. We went through the estimates to acquire and relocate and construct detention area there, although we didn't break it down into a small one-home detention pond. What we were suggesting at the time is that if you're going to have an impact in that area, you would likely have to acquire a larger tract of land. The recommendation that came from committee that was approved by the City Council directed us, following that discussion, to contact the public schools, obtain the right to construct detention ponds at Kennedy and Garfield. We have since discovered that Kennedy is not an acceptable site, and prepare similar plans to construct a detention area at Trot Avenue Southwest, and then investigate extending the Willmar Avenue storm pipe from the football field area out into Willmar Avenue and then south. Nowhere did it direct staff to acquire those properties to build detention ponds.
And I recall that being the case. Now, to follow up on this, my question is this: is staff willing to begin some preliminary evaluation and be able to report to the council if there is anything there that might be feasible, if we were to go down that road? Because we need to start somewhere. And I guess what I would like to see us do is take a closer look at that. Whether we do anything or not, I don't want to put this on hold anymore. We need to at least do some evaluation rather than get to a certain point where we say, well, this will work, that won't work. Now maybe we'll have to think about doing something else. Again, and I'll steal Jerry's word, being proactive about this and beginning to look at other alternatives simultaneously. And I guess given that, Mr. Mayor, I would move to direct staff to evaluate the area of 10th and Candio High for stormwater project alternatives and present their findings to the council by June 2008, per the recommendations of the city attorney in his letter to the council.
That's your proposal?
That's my motion, yes, sir.
Your motion. There's a motion on the table. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to direct staff to further evaluate and report back to the council by June of 2008, you're saying. Further comment about that?
I have to understand that better.
Go ahead, Doug.
I mean, I just don't understand it. I mean, you're talking 10th and Candio High. And alternatives. I mean, how far can they go? I mean, I'm not sure I understand it.
If I may.
Go ahead.
The city attorney listed, I believe it was 5 different points that needed to be addressed if the city council were to decide to acquire properties in that area. I think before we even decide whether or not, and I believe this was his very first recommendation, whether or not we would be interested in acquiring any of those properties, we'd need to have some kind of an idea of what projects are viable there. So that's what I'm asking staff to investigate, is what might be viable in that area, given any number of different scenarios that they may care to envision.
You think it goes beyond what they already did with the 6 properties?
I'm sorry?
Well, we had them look at the area and come back with some of their findings in regards to the 6 properties which Mick just talked about. You think it goes beyond that?
I think it does, because what the city attorney was looking for, I believe, was that the council needs to have in mind a specific proposal before we go down the road of whether or not we want to do this. And I think this council needs to know what may or may not be feasible in that area. I would like to know that sooner rather than later, because as we know, we're looking at a longer period of time before we can now begin to get a handle on some of this stormwater issue, because we've refused to apply additional funding here tonight. So we still need, I believe, more information, and I don't think that it's the wrong time to ask for that.
Can I ask, are you saying that you want the staff to come up with more ideas in addition to the holding ponds that they're already working on at Garfield and Trott?
Yes, sir. Specifically addressing the 10th and Candio High properties.
Why would that be limited to 10th and Candio High? What about the other properties that flooded in other parts of the city?
And that's a valid point. This happens to be really the flashpoint for all of this. And I think that, and we'll address this when we get to miscellany and talk about Hawk Creek and their meeting coming up a little bit.
Do you think we have sufficient staff to do this?
I would hope that we do.
Well, I mean, we're coming into the bulk of design and planning for street improvements, and now we're adding more onto that agenda?
I would like this to be investigated, and I would hope that staff would be able to do that.
All right. Any other comments from council members? There's a motion on the table, and it's been seconded. Councilmember Anderson, do you want to say something? You look perplexed.
I am. I'd just like the motion read again, please.
My motion is to move to direct staff to evaluate the area of 10th and Candio High for stormwater project alternatives and present their findings to the council by June 2008 per the recommendations of the city attorney in his letter to the council.
Okay.
All right. Ready to vote? The motion's on the table. It's been seconded. Those in favor of that motion say aye.
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 Those opposed say no.
No.
The motion passes. All right, that was an amendment to the improvement report for 2008 improvements. Kevin, did you get sufficient language there
Yes, sir.
for that? All right. Back. Now we're back to the motion to approve the improvement report. Is that correct?
I don't know, did we approve that, Kevin?
That is a resolution, and we have Reese and Christensen making it no roll call vote.
Okay. Back to the original motion that's been amended. Ready to vote? Roll call?
What was the original?
To approve or to order the staff to prepare the improvement report for 2008 improvements. This is for the whole city now. This is a report for the whole city. All right, roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes.
The last item that we had, Mr. Mayor and Council, was a discussion in regards to LED lights. If you recall, the committee had discussed some time ago after an article had appeared in the West Central Tribune referring to Ann Arbor, Michigan, who changed all their street lights over to LED lighting. We reviewed an email that was passed over from the MUC, which more or less told us that the technology wasn't there yet. However, in our discussion as a committee, we felt as though that if there was some way that we weren't convinced that the technology wasn't there, and we'd like to even or continue to look at this. We referred it back to staff because if we can, we've got new developments, new areas. If we could just put some LED lighting and see how it works, at least we have a test run. And so we've sent it back to staff, and this will be coming back to the committee also. So that was for information only. There was no other items, Mr. Mayor, so I will move to file the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to file these minutes. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Did we stick Labor Committee in here now?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and Council, at our December 17th meeting during the Labor Committee report, we moved a recommendation to recommend to the Council that we authorize the necessary steps to convene the Charter Commission. That was subsequently tabled since there were only 5 members, and that we needed, I thought, a fuller discussion with as much of the Council here as we could get. So at this time, I would like to move from the table the matter of the Charter Commission discussion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to remove from the table and bring it back for discussion, the Charter Commission idea. Those in favor of that say aye.
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 Those opposed? That carries. Council?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Gardner.
Just to refresh a little bit, and it's on page 11 of your minutes from our last meeting, if you want to check on that a little bit. But we had members of both the Hospital Board and the Municipal Utilities Board discussing with the committee charter term limits. Currently, they're limited to 2 3-year terms, and I think I'll ask Mr. Bonowitz if he would be willing to address that at least briefly from the municipal utility side in a moment. But one of the things that they're asking is that we consider convening the City Charter Commission to discuss adding a 3rd term for board and commission members. One of the things that they're talking about is that there's each of those bodies, the members have to, have some certain time to come up to speed, and they're becoming much more specialized, much more involved in what it is that they need to know. And about the time you get them ramped up, they're not able to make full use of the expertise that these members are gaining. So that's one of the things that, because of due to term limits, the city's really not getting an adequate return, they feel, on its investment. And they asked us to the council to convene the Charter Commission and consider these revisions. The committee has recommended, and the motion is on the floor, that the council authorize the necessary steps to convene the Charter Commission to consider term limits and other charter provisions. And I guess, with that, and we've received something from staff regarding Charter Commission statutes and things like that. But I guess, Mr. Mayor, at your discretion, if Mr. Bonowitz would be willing to address that just a bit further as well.
In a few minutes. I'd like to ask the council members if they want to make any comments about whether or not they want to go ahead with this discussion on whether or not the Charter Commission should be convened. Anybody have any opinion about that? Councilmember Anderson?
It's something we really need to take seriously before we step into that, because it could involve some things that we maybe hadn't anticipated. But I think we should have the discussion, at least. Is it something that we want to do? And having been on the hospital board, I can understand the length of time it takes to learn the terminologies and all the acronyms and everything that goes on. So I can understand why, from the hospital board perspective, they may want to get more time of their members. So I think we should talk about it.
Talk about convening?
Convening.
All right. Anybody else here? Councilmember DeBleek?
I agree with Councilmember Anderson. The time I've both put in years of service on both the Municipal Utilities Commission and the Hospital Board, and to learn the terminology and the inner workings of what those boards are dealing with. Granted, these are citizens volunteering their time to help with the operation of those city-owned businesses. I think if somebody is willing to put in 6 or even 9 years into that, it's a lot of expertise that they have to learn, and a lot of knowledge that they go out the door with after a 6-year term. If that could be tapped for another 3 years, would be a great benefit to the city. Now, I think we need to discuss whether or not we want to bring the Charter Commission back to meeting. As far being on the council, is what that could all, aware of what that could all entail. But I think there's prudent to have that Charter Commission meet on a routine basis and review the charter and review what is going on in the city as well. So I think there's merits to calling a Charter Commission. So.
Anyone else? Councilmember Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that I want to really talk about and understand are what the downside of that is. I know we've talked about that it can be kind of a wide open gamut of things that can be discussed, but I want to make sure that I understand what the parameters are and what, if any, kind of controls or parameters can be set forth, and what other pitfalls are there? Because I don't understand what all the pros and cons are of convening the Charter Commission, and I'd really like to better understand that.
Councilmember Dockin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a huge commitment of time, as you know. That's three-year terms. That's 9 years. I mean, that's a dedication at the highest level. Does the Charter Commission, would they be able to look at extending the boundaries outside of the corporate limits of the city to have people, or would that not be possible? Could we make that change?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's 2 types of cities in the state of Minnesota. There are charter cities and there are statutory cities. What that means in very simple terms is that in the beginning, this city was organized and put together by a group of citizens who wrote a city charter. Now, the majority of cities are put together by state law. That's what's called a statutory city. And they're governed by whatever the state legislation says. They can't, those that are statutory cities can't change unless the state changes the rules and regulations of the city. A charter city, which Willmar is, has the local control over how this city is organized, how it runs itself, because we were set up by our own city charter. Now, I'm not sure about this. There aren't many cities being formed anymore, but I think it's been a long time since a charter city has been established. In fact, I don't even know if they're allowed anymore, that they can be either one or the other. I think if there's a new city, it has to be a statutory city. I'm not positive, but I think that's what it is. So, the upside is that, a charter committee can look at what the charter says. They can make some adjustments. The downside is kind of like some issue or some group can kind of rush the charter committee and say, we want to do this, whatever this is. We want to have parking only on even numbered streets or something, and they push it through, and they convince the charter committee, and again, it can be any issue. It can be any issue. So the fact that we have a couple of issues now from the utilities and the hospital are legitimate issues. They can be discussed, and so far those are the only issues that have surfaced that I'm aware of. I don't know of any other issues that have come up.
We were trying to remember that at the committee, but I think there were some other issues, but we couldn't think of what they were.
Well, I think one of the things that we had spoken about was that there had been a request to consider per diem for municipal utilities members. And just in this discussion tonight, and Commissioner Reimer rightly brings it up, is that perhaps a discussion of the police commission would be something for a charter commission to consider as well. My understanding, and Mick or Kevin can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that basically once the Charter Commission is convened by the district court, they can consider the entire charter if they want. It comes back to us. And if we do not vote for the changes unanimously, then I believe then it goes to the electorate. Is that about right?
Well, I can. You've posed a series of questions. The answer to Mr. Docken's question is yes. You can. The charter deals with residency issues on appointments to boards and commissions, and I've heard that one before as well. And that charter commission could very well recommend that be removed, in addition to setting 3 consecutive 3-year terms. Who knows? But it can be done. I think it does open up the discussion to the full charter, and maybe the terminology "anything goes" is not very appropriate, but essentially that's. But the Charter Commission has been convened in the past, and you appoint reasonable people to the commission. And they've always done a good job in their review and developing recommendations for the council to act on.
Ken, weren't you a member of the Charter Commission? And that was back in the early 90s or late 80s?
Early 90s.
And I know one of the issues there when Mayor Hoagland was in office was to change the mayor's position from a 2-year to a 4-year term. And the Charter Commission recommended that. That's about the only thing I remember from that.
The other issue was the residency for the Place Hospital Board.
And they didn't change it.
They allowed for a physician, I believe, as an exception to that restriction.
The one thing that the Charter Commission cannot do, and that is they can't extend the taxing jurisdiction for the city. I mean, they're limited to the boundaries of the city. They can't change that.
And the police commission is not covered by city charter, it's covered by state statute.
Okay.
We haven't, Ken was on that committee. I know Ken Warzeka was on that committee. I don't remember the other members, but it's a 15 members.
Russ Bennett, Greg Smart.
Oh, yeah, Greg was on it.
Nancy Olson.
Ron Andreen.
Nancy was the chair, I think.
I think there's
Ken was.
3 people remaining that are currently residents of Willmar from that last charter commission.
Are those folks technically still members of the Charter Commission?
I would suspect so.
Lucky you.
Even though they left town and came back?
That one I'd have to do a little research on.
I know part of the process is that our city attorney, Mr. Ronning, spent considerable time educating the charter committee about the legal parameters that they had to work within. And I'm sure if the council goes that direction, he would do that again, you know, so that they have clear direction.
No, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Ron. No, Ron was raising his hand.
Ron, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Who does the appointing? How many members are on there? And can the entire council be on the Charter Commission?
It's up to 15 members, and the city, whether it be the mayor, the council, or whomever, would submit the names to the district court, so they're actually appointed by the court system.
Could the entire council be on the commission?
I don't think so. I don't think any council members can be on it.
I don't know.
Because they have to recommend back to the city council.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the council still has final say over it. Go ahead, Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. And, you know, given the fact, I didn't realize that City Attorney Ronning was not going to be able to be here tonight. And it is a big deal. It's a big step. I wanted us to have some discussion here tonight. I would not be opposed to putting this back to either committee or to a council work session or something like that to continue the discussion and you know, get some more questions. I see that you know Dennis wants to understand this more. I know we all do. And make sure of what the process is before we take a step like this.
Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me get this straight. The Charter Commission, the members would recommend changes. The changes would come to the council, and we can pick and choose. We can vote one up, one down, or does that have to be the whole thing? I mean, if it's up to us, then there really can't be any shenanigans. I mean, and we have to do it 8-0 vote, correct?
I think it's a majority. Ken, do you remember the process?
No, the Charter Commission recommends any changes to the city council. It requires a unanimous vote. All 8 council members must vote in favor of the change.
Or oppose it. If one opposes it, then the change doesn't take place.
Correct.
So that we do have final discretion.
Or you can, the citizens can petition for an election.
Okay, what I'm getting at is we need to be cautious about opening it, but not as cautious as we think. Because if we have final say in it, if we think something's really bad, it's going to be 8-0, I suspect. So maybe it isn't as dangerous as we think to open the Charter Commission. And some of these things, I think it's very important, this term limit thing. I know 9 years is a long time, but we could have 4 2-year terms or 3 3-year terms. But it takes some getting used to. On the Utilities Commission, the Hospital Board, the entire thing. It's similar to the council. We don't know what we're doing for 6 years, and then we find out.
Councilmember Anderson.
You know, I kind of like the idea of having this as a workshop topic, where we've gotten a lot of start for the information tonight. we can think about that, talk about it at a workshop and move on it. I don't, if we're going to do this, I'd really like to not wait until next fall or something ridiculous like that. If we're going to do it, I'd like to see us moving on it this spring, but I think it could be a good topic for a workshop.
You know, some of you have raised, some questions that I don't know that we know the answers to, because we do need Rich's opinion here. And maybe that would be helpful to have a council meeting with Rich to ask some of the legal stuff so that we're all on the same page on this. This could be the agenda for a special working session if you wanted it, with Rich and talk further about it.
Okay.
But what does the council think of that? To have a working session with our city attorney and city administrator and perhaps the past members of the charter committee, if they wanted to come to discuss the whole process and maybe then collect what the issues are too. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Assuming a consensus of the council to do just that, then I'm told that what we would need to do is to vote down the motion on the table, so that we could then pick it up at the committee meeting or at the work session.
What do we have to vote down on the table?
Mayor, members of the council, you took off the table a motion that was on the floor authorizing the necessary steps to convene the Charter Commission.
Oh, I see.
You don't want to do that. You want to move it back to a work session. Any other motion would be out of order. You have to deal with the motion you just took off the table. It was made and seconded, and then you tabled it. So you deal with this one because you took it off the table. And it appears now you don't want to do what this motion is saying.
All right. That's the motion, and it's been seconded. It's a live motion right now.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Does everybody understand that?
Well, I understand it, and I feel the same way Councilmember Gardner does. There needs to be a consensus prior to the vote, if that's indeed what we want to do.
All right. Ron, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Am I correct in saying that this takes 8 votes too?
No.
No.
It doesn't.
Simple motion.
It's a simple motion, and
authorize staff to take the necessary steps to get the Charter Commission convened.
and if we vote it down, we can bring it up again whenever.
Move it to a work session, whatever
I
you
see.
direct staff
Okay,
to
I
do.
understand it then.
All right. Bruce, go ahead.
I don't see any reason why we even want to vote it down. I think we've talked about Charter Commission now for 3 to 4 months. How long are we going to continue to discuss it? Everybody knows what the Charter Commission can and cannot do, and what effect it has on the city and the council, and what the directions are going to be giving the Charter Commission if it is formed by the council. So I see no point why we need to move this to a working session to discuss it some more. I'm ready to make a decision. I think we should proceed with the Charter Commission and have it called.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Reese.
So, Bruce, you don't have any fears of whatever?
It's the form of government that the city is set up under, and we shouldn't be afraid of what our citizens are going to recommend to change our laws that we operate under. It's a citizenship committee that looks at this. They're educated, and they've made good recommendations in the past, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't make good recommendations in the future.
And part of the process, like Councilmember Christensen has pointed out, is it comes back here.
It comes back here to this table, or it goes to the electorate.
Yep.
Councilmember Anderson.
I hear what everybody's saying, and I'm all for moving forward, but without having the city attorney here tonight, we've asked a number of questions of staff, and they've given us their best input, and, I'm sure that it's right, but I still would feel more comfortable if we had the city attorney present.
What kind of question do you have in your mind yet, Dennis?
I don't know, but I want to go through them all again. It's surprising sometimes what the city attorney will come up with, you know.
It's an understatement.
And that's meant with a lot of respect.
All right, let's vote on the motion on the table. The motion is to direct staff to set in motion the steps to convene the Charter Commission. And it's been seconded. Those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
No. I take it as the motion was defeated. Now, does the council want to make any other motion at this time? Councilmember Anderson?
I would move that we set a work group meeting to discuss this topic, have the city attorney present, and former members of the commission, if they're so inclined to be there. And I would like to have that done by February 15th.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to have a working session of the city council with the city attorney present and past charter members invited
Yes.
to further talk about what this is all about. All right, any other comment about that? Or Dennis?
To be completed by February 15th.
Thank you. To be completed by February 15th.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
This would be
Councilor
an open session, so
it's an open session.
Anybody could come and, of
And
course,
listen.
and listen. And I guess I bring that up because we do have members of the MUC and then the hospital that might have interest.
Yep. It's an open meeting, but only the council members discuss.
Yes.
Any other comments? Those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That motion carries. Number 12, consideration of on-sale liquor license transfer, Applebee's Restaurants North. Kevin, can you help us?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think this is the big yawn of the night. Apple American Limited Partnership of Minnesota, currently doing business as Applebee's Neighborhood Bar and Grill, has been sold, and the new owner is Applebee's Restaurants North LLC.
Aye.
We need the motion to approve the license transfer, and it is a roll call by charter.
So move. We have a motion and a second to transfer this license appropriately. Any comments?
One question, Mr. Mayor. With compliance check with that previous owner, what have we had for any compliance violations, or what has their history been? I don't recall.
Well, legally, I'd have to say you have a new owner. I don't believe there were any.
In the history since Applebee's been in existence, they've had one failure. And that's no man's memory, but I'm pretty sure it's right.
Okay. And again, the city attorney is not here, but and my answer to that is this is a whole new corporation. Staff has reviewed all the corporate officers and found all to be in order with the new officers, and nothing will change to any other citizen's review by the sign or the food served at the current Applebee's. But as far as your question is, I guess the slate would be clean.
Okay.
Would be.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Roll call.
Councilmember Swenson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Dockin.
Aye.
DeBleek.
Aye.
Reese.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion carries. Next is a consideration of council meeting dates for January and February. Mick?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the second meeting in January is scheduled for the 21st, which is a holiday, and the second meeting in February, which is scheduled for February 18th, is also Monday, a holiday. We're asking the council to consider rescheduling those meetings to January 22nd and February 19th, respectively.
Is that a Tuesday then?
Yes, sir.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to reschedule the city council meeting from January 21st to January 22nd. And from February, what was the date, Mick? February what?
18 to 19.
February 18th to February 19th. Comment? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. We're down to miscellany. Councilmember Dockin, you wanted to say something?
I'll hold until next council meeting, Mr.
All
Mayor.
right. Councilmember Gardner, you wanted to talk about Hawk Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to let the, I believe everyone on the council received the notification, but also to let the public know that the Hawk Creek Watershed Project is holding their annual meeting on Wednesday morning, the 23rd of this month at the Candy Entertainment Center. One of the items that will be presented are stormwater rainwater gardens for public use, and there will be a presentation on that, as well as some other watershed issues. And my understanding is that there's a you can call and reserve a place there. It's open to the public, and if you want to call and reserve a meal for later, you can certainly do that. All members of the public are invited. Anyone who's interested in stormwater issues certainly should attend. And that meeting, I believe, is done by about 12 or 12:30. So it starts at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. On January 23rd.
Yes, sir.
And this is the Hawk Creek Watershed Annual Meeting?
Yes.
Annual meeting. Okay. Thank you, Steve. We are now at Council Committee meeting dates. City Finance Committee.
Finance Committee will meet Monday, the 14th, at 4:45.
City Finance, January 14th, 4:45. Public Works, Public Safety.
Tuesday, the 15th, 4:45.
Public Works and Public Safety, January 15th at 4:45. Labor.
No meeting.
Community Development.
Thursday, the 17th at 4:45.
Community Development will meet January 17th at 4:45. All those meetings are at City Hall. That's what I have on the agenda. Is there anything else? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion and we got one last thing?
Someone put on the Dean Johnson contract as an additional item on the agenda.
That was Councilman Dockin.
That's what you're pulling off. Okay.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. We are adjourned.